Good morning, and thank you for joining in. So, we'll get into the whys and some hows of pen testing. Before we get into the details of it, imagine this, right? You wake up one morning to find your company's website is either defaced or you get to know that your customer data is stolen. It's a nightmare. But for a lot of organizations, we're seeing the kind of data breaches that happen, the cyber attacks that happen. So for a lot of businesses, this nightmare is a reality. So it doesn't matter the size of the organization or whether you're in fintech, healthcare, or running a small business. It's basically the data and the systems that are valuable for cyber criminals or attackers. We see and hear of organizations of all sizes being attacked, right? So it's like a reminder for all of us that no matter the size of the organization, no one is immune from any cyber attack. Attackers typically are looking for vulnerabilities and low-hanging fruits or weaknesses, which are an easy way in for them to compromise the organization of the security and thus steal any data that could possibly be present in the organization. So that's where pen testing would come into play. So it's typically like having your own cybersecurity specialist or a team of cybersecurity specialists proactively looking for vulnerabilities before the bad guys even know that they exist and are able to exploit it. So what we're essentially doing in a pen test is staying ahead of these cybersecurity criminals or hackers, being proactive and taking control of our organization's security. Today, we'll talk about the whys, the whats, and the hows of pen testing. What exactly is pen testing? In a nutshell, it's like a fire drill, right? That you would do for cyber attacks. So we're simulating the attacks and the techniques that a real attacker would use in a real world to identify the vulnerabilities and test the defenses of your digital asset that is specifically in scope for the test. So the objective is to identify all of these vulnerabilities, weaknesses, or misconfigurations, call it what you may, and dig deep into understanding what these misconfigurations would potentially cost in terms of impact if a vulnerability exists, right? So imagine someone trying to steal your customers' credit card information if you are a financial company. So pen testing of that website would uncover vulnerabilities or weaknesses that would allow an attacker or basically a website that would or an online site that would store these credit card information. So if you're testing it, you're potentially trying to identify all vulnerabilities in that application that would lead to an attack in an attempt to identify and mitigate the issue beforehand. So that's what pen testing essentially does. Why does an organization need pen testing? I think primarily all of us have traditionally looked at pen testing as a requirement for any compliance. So it's very essential. Say high trust, PCI, ISO, SOC, or pretty much any acronym that you could think of, which possibly keeps you up at night, require pen testing. Pen testing, of course, is much more than just a compliance checkbox. It sort of gives you an understanding of what your security posture is, or say it helps you get to true security. So essentially, think of consequences of a cyber attack, right? It could be financial losses that could make your business either shut down or just crippled, or lawsuits that could go on for years at no end. Or imagine you having to cut a sorry face after a data breach to tell your customers that customer data has been stolen or compromised, that sinking feeling in the gut. You don't want to be there. So pen testing would definitely help you avoid or at least prepare for such issues. We've all heard of lot of data breaches that happen, and it's only on the rise with the years. There are millions of credit card data that's stolen. There are health data records that are stolen. And all of these breaches and cyber attacks recovery, or just the breach itself, costs millions of dollars to organizations. So recovering from that attack would cost a fortune. So in majority of the cases, what we've seen, any attack, right, we've seen that if issues, so it's basically a misconfiguration or a security issue that was not treated or not identified to begin with, that has led to this breach. So in majority of the cases, a pen test or maybe an advanced test could have certainly avoided the attack or made it much more harder for attacker to get into or compromise the organization. So with a pen test, you'll have a clear understanding of vulnerabilities, your security posture, and also how to fix these issues and stay ahead of the attackers. So, with all of this, I think what a pen test would also enable or provide is your customers or your partners or even your employees being aware that security is something that you take seriously, that allows or enables them to have that trust and confidence in your product and organization, or using the services that your organization offer. So, having said that, it's also important to know that this is a continuous process and not a one time activity. Since it's a point in time activity where you're testing at that particular snapshot the security posture of the digital assets, it has to be a more continual process. We're going to talk about that in the coming slides. We, of course, have a proven methodology that ensures that our testing is thorough and efficient. But the methodology is more like a roadmap for us. It guides us through the entire process, how we're supposed to be doing a pen test, irrespective of what the digital asset is. So let me break it down phase wise, right? So it's a 5-phase process. We begin with planning and reconnaissance. So this is a phase where we're not actively testing for vulnerabilities or looking for vulnerabilities. We begin with trying to identify ports or services. If it's a network test, we try and identify ports and services that are exposed, and what kind of service is exposed and how they could be exploited. We start developing our test case. And if it is a web app, then we understand and go through the entire web application to understand the workflow, to understand the business logic, to understand how the request response work. In the initial phase, we plan our course of action. We write test cases based on, which is very custom to the application and the services that we see. Moving on, the next phase is vulnerability analysis, where we employ a hybrid approach for testing, where we're also running scans and performing manual tests. So in this phase, we run the automated scans, try and weed out false positives. The automated scans are primarily to enable us to concentrate or focus more of the manual test on things that are more critical, and allow the tools to give us low-hanging fruits and things that we know can be identified by scanners itself. We also perform manual tests to identify specific vulnerabilities which we're aware that scanners fail to identify. In the exploitation phase, the issues that we've identified, we try and exploit them. And then in post-exploitation, once the issues have been exploited, we see if we're able to land and expand, or we clean up systems where we may have successfully exploited, if we have the ability to delete payloads and clean them up. We present reports in an interactive portal where we have the technical description of each vulnerability, where we get into details of what the impact would be based on the context of the application or the entire environment itself. So the severity, impact, everything is tailored to what we've observed in that specific test, and not standardized severity metrics, if I may. So this is typically the methodology that we follow. Key stakeholders in a pen test, right? There are multiple teams, multiple people, multiple stakeholders involved in a pen test. It's not, let me just employ a pen testing company and I'm good to go. It requires collaboration between various stakeholders, between various teams. To begin with, it's very, very important. Management or the leadership team itself, it's one of the key pillars because they're responsible for fostering a security first mindset or culture. You can't just do pen tests because the report has to be consumed. It takes a lot of effort to support a pen testing activity. It takes a lot to consume the report in terms of fixing the issues that have been identified. So all of that requires support from the management. All of that requires the management to ensure that they provide and empower the team with these abilities, right? And also, it's important, the risk appetite, of course, has to be defined by the management itself to understand what is the risk appetite of the organization, what are the vulnerabilities that have to be fixed, where do I, triaging these vulnerabilities. So it becomes important that management is on board to begin with. And of course, the IT team or the product team, they play a vital role as well, because it's important that these teams work with the pen testing company to provide the required access, to say provide a whitelisting if required, to share credentials if it's a gray box test. Based on what kind of activity, the level of involvement also sort of increases. And being able to understand report, use the report, fix the issues that have been identified, all of this will be the responsibility of either the IT team or the product team itself. So they're going to play a very important role in here as well. Also, third party service providers, right? It's important that they are kept in loop too. In today's world, there is a lot of dependencies, or we use a lot of third party provider service providers. So if an organization is using a third party service provider, it's important that they are kept updated, or they're kept in loop about the test that is performed, and based on the service that the organization is getting from the third party, either they just need to be informed, or approval also may be required in some cases, and in some cases ensuring they have access to the reports. If they're responsible for maintaining the code or fixing the issues, then it's important that they collaborate with the pen testing company, is also becomes very, very important. Finally, of course, the pen testing company itself. It's important that everything is communicated well with the pen testing company, starting from the objective of the pen test or any specific requirements that the organization, the target organization might have, needs to be communicated in advance. So all of these are high level stakeholders of a pen test. So it's important that all of them are in sync about the engagement itself. All right. Moving on. How long does it take to perform the test, right? Of course, all of us want to get tests done quickly, want to see the report. It's important to consider the time that's taken because there are a lot of stakeholders involved, a lot of people involved. But also, what matters is how thorough you are in a test. There are multiple factors that affect the duration of the test. That is, what are the targets? What is your objective? What kind of pen test you are getting done? So, if it's a black box test, it's straightforward. You don't have to share much details. The pen testing company goes almost all in blind. If it's gray box, then you get partial information. If it's white box, then you have a lot more information. So depending on what assets are being tested, how many assets are being tested, the kind of testing, and of course the complexity of the infra, the environment itself, the time duration may differ. But in general, from a small to medium sized organization, pen testing should take 2 to 3 weeks, and for larger organization, it may run into weeks. Okay, moving on. Pen testing deliverables. What should you expect after a pen test, right? The most primary element of the report, the technical summary. Ensure that before you get a pen test, or before you decide and zero down on who you're going to partner with for your pen test, get a sample report, ensure you see what it looks like. It's important that the report talks about the vulnerability that's identified, what exactly it is, not just in a general sense, but also in the context of your application or your environment. Ensure that there is proof of concept for every exploit or vulnerability that's identified. Risk prioritization, again, risk prioritization in the context of what is being tested, and remediation advisory at the least. So it's great to find vulnerabilities, but if you don't know how to fix them, it becomes a challenge. So make sure that it's important to have all of these technical bits in the report. Also, to cater to the management, getting a high level executive report, which would talk about the overall security posture. The strengths, the best practices are also important because they talk about your current understanding of maturity or security maturity of the organization, and what the business impact of all of the vulnerabilities in silos. Each vulnerability may seem, like it may not be critical, but a lot of times training these vulnerabilities make a lot of impact. The impact could be critical based on what kind of low risk issues you identify as well, and overall security posture and risk to business. So these are very valuable for management to ensure that any decision they make regarding the security could be buying new security devices or implementing any policy. It should be driven by the data that is present. So engagement letter, usually if you're working with clients or any customers, if you have a product, clients would usually like to see or understand that you take security seriously, and presenting a pen testing report or a letter that you perform testing on a periodic basis and the product is free of vulnerability would be essential. So get a letter talking about what the security posture is without revealing a lot of security issues in them. Also, I think in today's day and age, having an interactive report is a must. So you're able to track vulnerabilities to closure, which is one of the biggest issues in security teams. We do a lot of security testing, but how do I ensure that findings have been closed? How do I track these findings? How do I assign these findings to the person responsible to fix it? How do I monitor progress? How do I know which is the oldest? If there is a vulnerability that was open, say 4 months ago, if that's still open, then that's a problem. How do I get these kind of intel, right? So having an interactive reporting portal is it becomes important to facilitate and provide with all of these information. Now that we understand why we should do pen testing, what to expect in a pen test, it's also important. We've been asked this question a lot of times. Can I just decide, as an organization, once we decide, okay, we need a pen test for whatever reason, then is there something that we need to do? Is there prep work that needs to go in? Yes. So the answer to that is yes. If you do a little bit of preparation at your end, it will definitely go a long way. You will see a lot more value to the pen test activity that you're doing, as opposed to just coming in and telling a pen test vendor or partner that we just need a pen test done. First, you need to have a clear understanding of the objective of the test and the scope. So, what exactly it is that you want to get tested, right? Is it your web app? Is it your external network? Is it your internal network, your cloud infra, or whatever? So, what is it that you want to get tested? Be very clear about these goals and communicate them to the pen testing team. It's important that these are conversations that you have with the pen testing team, especially if it's the first few tests that you're going through. So they're able to guide you as well on what you should look at. To decide these, you would, of course, need to have an inventory of all your digital assets and categorize the criticality of the assets to business and the data that they basically based on the data that they possess, right? So this will enable you to prioritize the test that needs to be done and ensure that the most valuable assets are being tested and protected. Next, of course, is the timing. You want to ensure that you're performing the test during off business hours so you don't disrupt business in any case. Pen testing is generally non intrusive in nature. In most tests, all DOS, DDoS attacks, or anything that can bring down the server is not done. And these are things that have to be established in the beginning. So make sure you have these conversations. Second is availability of your internal team, right? We talked about how coordination between the ID team or the product team becomes important. So ensuring that the team has availability and you've accounted for their time. It may not be a whole lot, but at least some time of theirs before commencing the test to ensure that the pen testing team has everything they need in terms of access, in terms of just sharing the list of assets that need to be tested. And post test, the team being able, having the time to consume the report and being able to fix the issues. So yeah, it's important to get the timing right. So ensure to think about what kind of information you would definitely need in the report. If there is any specific requirements, be upfront and share that with the pen testing team so they're able to create the report in the format that you need. Or even if you need a specific format in which you'd like to consume the report internally, through which it becomes easier for you to manage and triage the identified issues, then ensure that that happens. Also, quick tip before you do a pen test, ensure that basic hygiene, patching all servers and systems, all of them are up to date, and known issues on any software versions, they're all patched and fixed, because you don't want lengthy report with all of these issues which you could have clearly avoided if just patching was up to date and all software was up to date, right? You would want the pen testing team to essentially utilize time to identify more critical issues. So there's value in that. So we talk about how often an organization should conduct a pen test. Traditionally, most organizations have followed annual pen tests. I think this was driven by compliance requirements, which in most cases is annual, uh, either regulatory or compliance. So it's just become a norm now that pen testing has to be done annually. So this is what happens, or this is what we're observing mostly. But in today's day and world where everything's agile and the technological landscape itself is evolving every day, and there are new threats emerging every day, an annual test would not be adequate. So, if you're doing a test, say in December, and your next test is the December of next year or November of next year, so for that 11 months, or say a new vulnerability was introduced in the software that you use in February. So, for a good 8 months, you're just, or 10 months, you're just open, environment is open for attackers to exploit that vulnerability, right? So you don't want to leave that many months before your annual test. So, in an agile environment where the threat landscape is continuously evolving, maybe due to code changes or new threats emerging, like we talked about, like an annual test would not cut it. So, it's important that we have continuous pen tests to address these issues in a timely manner. These will, so once you've identified it timely, you can mitigate the risk before they're exploited in the wild, right? And of course, this helps reduce the time to remediation, because you'd address the vulnerabilities sooner and you wouldn't be waiting for another 10, 11 months before you perform your annual test. Having said that, annual test or periodic test is, it's a good starting point. So as your security maturity increases, you should start thinking about moving to a more continuous approach where you're not relying on just an annual test, but have mechanism in place where you're continually performing these tests when when you change code, or when you push new code, or when you make any infra changes. So yeah, while annual pen tests or regulatory requirements for annual pen tests is great, it will not be enough to ensure that you're truly secure. So I think continuous pen testing is the way to go. All right. We'll talk about a case study or a vulnerability that we uncovered in one of our tests, right? I've specifically chosen this example because it looks very simple. It seems like just some unusual behavior and not even a misconfiguration to begin with. It could very well have been a negligence on the dev team, like a minor one to think of it, but the consequence of it is much, much higher. We were performing a gray box application pen test, which means that we had a set of credentials to log into the application that was provided to us by the client itself. We had access to post login pages. We were testing the post login pages as well. It was a normal web application with a standard login page using cookie based authentication. As we talked about earlier, in our first phase, we're just traversing through the application to see the application behavior, to see request response, and to see the workflows, to understand the workflows, and then possibly start thinking of what an attacker would do or how we could potentially compromise the application itself, right? In this process, we identified one particular endpoint apart from the login page, which was setting a new cookie. A new cookie was being set every time this endpoint was called. So, curious by how this was behaving, because typically it's only the login page that sets a cookie. The engineer flagged it and then decided to perform further testing in the testing phase. So during the testing, the engineer tampered with what he was seeing, right, with that request. He saw that there was a hidden parameter that was being transmitted, which was that of the email address of the user. So it wasn't something that was user input, but it was automatically fetching from the user's logged in session itself. So it was a hidden parameter. So he changed that to a different email address, which he knew existed, and removed the cookie value. So in the response, a new cookie was generated. In the backend, this new cookie was linked to the email address that the new email address that engineer, the tester, had sent. Typically, if we provided any valid email address, a new cookie was being generated and getting linked to that, which meant that we were able to log in as any user without the credential, right? Just that endpoint, provide the email address and get the new cookie and access the entire application as impersonating that user. So we didn't need credentials of the user to access the entire application. So we were able to bypass authentication entirely, right? So while it looked like a simple misconfiguration, this led to complete account takeover of all of the accounts that were present. So at Accordion, we go just beyond surface level testing to identify vulnerabilities that require expertise and curiosity both. So I think this was a clear case where it looked like something very, very small, but led to a critical, I mean, like a huge impact. Why accordion, right? There are a lot of certifications that individuals in the field of cybersecurity can obtain, like all of OSCP, OSWE, CRTP, name it. And there are tons of certifications, but on the org level, there are very few certifications that an organization can obtain. At Accordion, we are CREST accredited, which is the gold standard for pen testing. This demonstrates expertise and our experience, and the fact that we have a thorough methodology to ensure we're identifying all vulnerabilities possible. We're also PCI certified for the fourth time. This again is another highest industry standard we meet. We also develop our in house tools and scripts that are tailored to the specific needs of the test or the application or the network or infra that we are testing. We leverage AI, of course, to enhance the accuracy and efficiency and to minimize human error. with the experience we have, with the number of tests we have performed, and the vulnerabilities that we've identified over the years, we have the experience and expertise to tackle complex security challenges. And our offerings are always tailored to specific customer needs. We're always flexible. We try and understand what each client requirement is, and make recommendations on what kind of tests should be done. So we usually have conversations with our clients before we recommend testing, to understand what their requirement is, and sort of propose the kind of test that would actually cater to their requirement. So we're more of a partner to them than just a pen testing vendor, and we truly care about ensuring that all of our clients are secure. We also ensure that we handhold clients through vulnerability triaging, and also with remediation advisory post pen testing. So we're supporting them to ensure that these vulnerabilities that we've identified are fixed as well. Sorry. And of course, we talked about how interactive reporting is important. It allows our clients to assign these vulnerabilities to specific folks who are actually fixing the issues and who are working on the issues, and then allows them to request for on-demand retest once they've mitigated the issues. All in all, I think at Acorian, we're not just pen testing vendor, but more of a security partner who want to ensure all the clients that we are security partners for are truly secure. That's all I had. Do we have any questions? Hey, Steve.
Ash, here's one. How many penetration tests has your company completed and reported on to give them a perspective of your experience?
Over 1,500 tests is what we've conducted.
Okay. And is the penetration test agnostic, industry agnostic, or does it matter that they're in healthcare or government, what have you?
Oh, so we cater to all industries, so fintech, healthcare, and honestly, it doesn't matter. It's industry agnostic for sure. As long as the objective is to identify vulnerabilities in your digital infrastructure, we can definitely help you with that.
What are some of the most common issues, Ashritha, that you have experienced in PT? Some of the challenges that you've experienced working with people on penetration testing?
The challenges we've identified, usually of late, usually around broken authentication or authorization. One of the classic example was the case study we had, where authentication was in place, but we were able to bypass it. In terms of network, also injection attacks, we believe that injection attacks would be taken care of considering they're really old. But even to this day, we see we're able to successfully inject our payloads and talk to SQL servers directly, or say command injection, where we're able to talk to remote hosts directly. So these are some of the common issues that we've observed in application.
So,
Steve, was that? Sorry.
I'm sorry. These SQL injection and these other things, I would imagine that most of these are related to a web portal
Yes.
access. And the question I would have about that is, how did you remediate that? That other than rewriting the code, or was there something that you recommended in terms of the network configuration, some kind of proxy or something like that? Or how did you fix that or remediate recommendation wise?
Right. The absolute remediation would be to, of course, fix the code. But we've seen that it's not immediate, and it can't be fixed immediately. So it leaves you exposed for as long as you're able to remediate it within the code. So we usually recommend, implementing a WAF, which is able to, with the rule sets, where the attack, in case of an attack or in case of payloads relating to SQL injection or any injection for that matter, the request is dropped.
Is the PT, is that in terms of pricing, is that related to the number of hosts, or how is that typically the pricing model typically done with?
Yes, it's usually with the number of assets you'd want to get tested.
And Norman, just to give you a feel for the starting point, they start right around $6,000, $6,500, something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I want to thank Ashritha again and everyone at Acorian for participating in today's presentation. Please let us know if you'd like to learn more or have a separate conversation with Ashritha and the team to see how this can help your organization directly. Thank you very much for attending, everyone.